All right, now, as many of you George Clinton fans will notice, this is very, very incomplete. And the reason why is because there's a couple of George Clinton albums from the 80s that I'd love to have that are actually out of print and very, very much heralded collector's items on CD and impossible to find on cassette and next to impossible on vinyl. But George Clinton's stories about reissues and labels is a whole other blog entirely. So this is what I have for my collection. Now, this is George Clinton's Computer Games. This has since been reissued a couple times, but this is the original CD reissue from 1991 or 2, I believe. And of course, this came out in 1982. It's basically a Parliament album, Parliament Funkadelic, using the name George Clinton, him starting a solo career. And of course, this has Atomic Dog on it. You know, Snoop Dogg made a big thing out of that. My two favorite songs, in addition to that, are actually the 12-minute Loopzilla and One Fun at a Time. A little more 80s, this album. A little more 80s touches, but George Clinton with Bernie Worrell's kind of video game sound and what Junie Morrison did kind of anticipated the 80s boogie funk sound in a lot of ways, so not a big surprise there. Now, I don't have his album You Shouldn't Have Bit Fish from 1983. My father's got it, but you're not going to see that in this collection. This is some of my best jokes or friends from 1985 with a cutout. This is kind of a Cold War P-Funk parable about a secret agent named 000. As a matter of fact, the first song on it is called that. And there's a music video, I think you can find it on the internet, of 000 and Bulletproof. Two of my favorite songs on this album. Now, on the title track, Thomas Dolby shows up, and he was a good companion of George's. This is a pretty good album. Probably going to get into this again. Very 80s, a lot of big drums, but you know George knew how to do good stuff with this sort of thing. Now, there's another album that came out a year after this, where he sang with Vanessa Williams, not too long after she was dethroned after her whole business with Playboy on Do Fries Go With That Shake. And that's from the 1986 album R&B Skeletons in the Closet. Very, 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 very hard to find on CD. Needs reissuing now. Okay. This, in 1988-89, George Clinton hooked up with Prince and recorded this album with Prince and Public Enemy's Chuck D for Paisley Park. Airbound is a fantastic song and just really interesting example of the 80s. Again, I have to get more into this. This is an album that's a little difficult, a little harder to get into than some of his 80s stuff, but you know, George could be that way. This is his second Paisley Park album. I don't think a lot of money was being put into the cover art, but Hey Man, Smell My Finger. And this has a song on it, recorded in 1993, called Paint the White House Black. Songs I like on here are actually The Flag Was Still There, which is based on a Prince song. I believe Hollywood and Way Up are too. I'm not sure, but this is his last Paisley Park album. Very 90s graphics. A lot of pictures inside. Full lyric guide. Filling every last moment of the CD up. Again, very typical of the early 90s. 14 cuts. Not a bad album. Very hip-hop, New Jack kind of stuff, but George knows what to do with it. This is his 1995 album, The Awesome Power of a Fully Operational Mothership, abbreviated like that. Now, this is one of the reasons why I haven't gotten into a lot of George Clinton albums from later, because this began a trend. There's a nice picture of George kind of flying around. A trend of too many guest stars. They're actually on here, and a lot of them, you know, make instrumental contributions, but a lot of them are only on little snippets on some of these songs. So, I mean, it's not like their participation is anything that's that big a deal. And he's relied a little too much on guest stars in the recent years, and like so have a lot of people. But if anybody wants to get funked up, is an amazing number. And you know, that's this album actually anticipates G-Funk. Actually, it's based on G-Funk, since G-Funk actually came out before this. George Clinton was performing a lot during this period with Lion King drapes around him and shoelaces in his hair. It was during that period. He was appeasing a lot of the Horde, Lollapalooza crowd. You know, he wasn't really touring with the consistent group. Now, in 2013, George is back wearing suits and processes and kind of being cool, ironically. He still got his groove, but he's back being cool guy. But that's the newest, as it were, George Clinton now might actually have. So, happy birthday, George Clinton. Keep the funk alive.